And so when you look at the birth date, right, and people are into astrology, understand how important birth dates are, right, and the full name, the full complete name, because that's sort of, if you want to call it, the stamp, the karmic
Yeah,
stamp,
like it's like your imprint. Like this is the day
imprint.
you were born, and this is your name. Like there was
Yeah.
no mistake that this is the letters and numbers that you have in this lifetime. It's your code. Welcome to the Design of You podcast. My name is Leah. I'm a human design expert, spirituality coach, wellness guru, and manifestation powerhouse. My podcast is here to educate, inspire, and uplevel your life. I love sharing with you the ins and outs of the human design system in a practical, empowering, and embodied way. Thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to seeing you in the show. Welcome back to another episode of the Design of You. You guys are in for a treat today. We have Josh Siegel, who is a numerologist, and he's freaking incredible, let me tell you. Okay, so this episode was recorded in January of 2024. So it's been a few months since we actually spoke, and as you guys know, we had a break with the podcast. So actually last week's episode, this week's episode, and then in a couple weeks we have an interview with Anna Grace Newell, AG University. So get excited for that. Those were all recorded quite a while ago. But as you guys know, the podcast was on a bit of a hiatus, so we did not have a chance to release these. And I wanted to talk a little bit about human design and do a little catch up before I brought my guests into the mix. So yeah, I know you guys love guest episodes. I personally do as well. All of our best episodes have a guest involved. And so yeah, this is just one of those really cool episodes where we're diving into a topic that I know a lot of you are interested in. And it's something that I get a lot of questions about, because oftentimes when people see, like, when we talk about like profile in human design, which is that 2-number combination. So oftentimes people will be like, oh, is human design related to numerology? Or even when we talk about gates and channels, just all the different numbers in human design. And I'm going to be clear right now, numerology is not a part of human design. Now, numbers are a part of our lives in lots of different ways. And so you could argue that numerology is a part of everything, but it is not a part of human design. But I know that numerology is a really, really cool technology and a really cool system that is very helpful, and it teaches us a lot. And so I had the privilege of talking to Josh back in January to talk about numerology. And he even did a little bit of a reading on me. And it was awesome. I truly, truly was blown away by this conversation because, you know, as being in the spiritual space, I work a lot with angel numbers, and I've subscribed to a lot of the, like, just the signs and messages. And like, we actually talked a little bit about angel numbers, and I was shocked to hear what Josh had to say. And also just in general, like, just the way that numerology works. And Josh has such an incredible story. I mean, he's worked with celebrities and really big people out in the world, and he's been doing numerology for decades. And so he's just truly brilliant, and I could not get enough of the conversation. I truly was like, can we hang out and be best friends? He was so cool. And it was even funny because what you guys didn't see is we get off the phone and he's like walking around his apartment. He's like talking to me, and we're just like talking about stuff in general. And I'm like, I love your style. And he's like, you do? And I just was like, yes, like your decor. I mean, I loved talking to Josh. He was freaking awesome. So I know that you guys are going to love this episode as much as I did. And so if you've been curious about numerology, and even if you haven't been curious about numerology, just sit back and listen, because it is such a great conversation. And yeah, so I'm, again, not going to do much of an intro like last week, because the bulk of the episode is incredible, and I don't want you guys to waste any more time hearing me ramble about just how awesome it was. And so without further ado, let's get into the episode with Josh Siegel talking about numerology. All right, guys, I'm here with Josh Siegel today to talk a little bit about numerology. We're very excited to dive into this world. I know lots of you have had questions about numerology. I mean, just the other day, I got a text from someone asking me if numerology was a part of human design, which, spoiler alert, it is not. But we are so excited to have Josh here today to tell us all the things about numerology, how he got into it, and how we can really use numerology in our lives. And specifically, Josh, I'd love to hear about how we can use numerology in 2024. So, but let's just start with your story. Tell us everything about you, how you got into numerology, and all the things.
Well, Leah, thanks for having me on your podcast. I'll try to make it as brief as possible. But so I'm an unlikely person to be into this world based on my upbringing. I grew up. I was adopted. My parents were much older and kind of conservative in their thinking. My mother was a professor at UCLA, a German immigrant, and my father was in labor law. He was an arbitrator and an attorney. And I would not say these people were spiritual at all. I think what it was is that I had this inherent sort of question about life. I thought there was more to life than what I was seeing. They couldn't answer any of those questions. So because I was adopted into a Jewish family, I studied Kabbalah at a younger age, and which is, Jewish mysticism.
Yep.
And what's so interesting about the Kabbalistic path is what I found fascinating was this sort of mathematical formula to the mind of God. I thought, whoa, this is super interesting. And it kind of made it cool for me because I grew up with these sort of analytical parents. So numbers and some sort of mathematical process seemed okay, yet it was tapping into this sort of otherworldliness, right? But that it didn't stop there, because at some point I started looking around more to see if there was more in other traditions, and I was sort of shocked to find out that the Hebrews weren't the only ones who delved into mystical usage of numbers. I mean, it was even far ancient. And that's when I remember I found a book called The Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly Palmer Hall. And it had sort of an encyclopedia of all this mystical knowledge from across the world and every tradition. And I still have a copy of that book today. And I have to tell you, what I found was kind of startling. That is that all the ancient traditions had a system of numbers that described how the universe worked, but in a mystical, divine manner. Numbers were venerated, gods were connected to numbers, qualities and within nature were connected to numbers. And it was not just in any one path, but sort of universally. And they all seemed to use the numbers similarly. That blew my mind. I'm like, we don't learn that in school. Did you learn that in school? I didn't.
No.
I know you learned the Pythagorean theorem in math,
Yeah.
right? And
we
so
learn lots of things we probably aren't using from math class.
No, I'm definitely not using that shit. But I will say that what you don't know is that Pythagoras, which we study 2,500 years later, in math class, was also, one of the sort of originators of modern numerology as we know it. At least it's attributed to him. And he believed that numbers were divine, and that he was, taught these mystical concepts to his students, who had to take a vow of silence for 5 years just to get into school. Wow. And so, but we're not taught that. We're taught the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, but we're not taught that numbers were believed to have divine characteristics. So, which is what he also taught factually, So anyways, all that led me to, at some point, if there's a code to the universe, is there a code to us as human beings? Right? I mean, aren't we a part of the universe? Aren't we a part of the all? Why would and then you start thinking about this. Do we all not have human DNA, which is a mathematical code that's mapped out, that will show us how we're going to look, like our predisposition for disease or hair color, eye color, how tall we are? It's all hidden in a mathematical code. Why wouldn't there be a code to who we are, our individual life path, our lessons? Why would the code that describes the universe, that was universally believed, and why would there be a code to our physicality and there not be a code to other aspects of life? And that's when I found a book on numerology over 25 years ago, because that's how long I've been doing this. I've estimated I've done over 20,000 sessions. And I've devoted my life work to this. And, I was raised by an academic. So I did essentially research, case studies, trial and error, to see how far I could get into decoding the human mind and why we're here.
What is do you know your human design? I don't think we looked it up actually.
Yeah, it's really bizarre, but I had talked to other people about this on a podcast,
Hmm.
right? And they did my human design, and I have the same chart as the man who originated the system.
Oh my gosh, wait, no way. Okay, let's get your birth information. I want to actually
Yeah,
pull up your chart right now.
right.
Okay. Oh, you were 5'1". So I'm a
Yeah,
5'1" as well. But we're both 5'1" sacral generators, which is really cool. Very different
right.
charts though. But yeah, Ra, the originator of the human design system, is a 5'1", which is really spectacular.
And a heretic.
Yep, the heretic. Yep, the heretic. You need the researcher. I was wondering if you had the one in your profile because as you
Right,
were talking about like the research and the academics and kind of digging
right.
deep into this, I'm like, he's got to have a one in his profile. I know it. And I was wondering if you had the five as well. So, so fascinating.
Well, here's what's really bizarre is I didn't know anything about this guy.
Hmm.
And when I did this interview, I had just come back from summer vacation, and I just came back days from Ibiza. And when they did my chart, they said, not only is your chart startlingly the same as the man who created the system, but he developed it while he was living in Ibiza.
How interesting is that?
Yeah.
Wow.
How's that for synchronicity?
Yeah, that is crazy. That's very cool. Well, I love that. So there's so many things I feel like I could just, I mean, I have a million questions for you. Everything you've
Mm-hmm.
been talking about is just so intriguing to me. First and foremost, when you were talking about numbers, just the way that we have, everything that you were talking about, if all of these, the ways of the universe, the laws of the universe, if they're all made up of numbers, how are we not made up of numbers? I fully believe in that. But also it's like then you start to think about computer systems and how like zeros and ones make up computers. It's just all of these crazy things and synchronicities. So it's very fascinating to me. And then I was also thinking about Interstellar, of course, which I feel like
Mm-hmm.
you've seen that movie, I'm assuming.
Actually, I haven't yet.
You
No, I haven't.
haven't yet.
No, no. Should I?
Yes. Oh my
Okay.
goodness, you need to. There's a
Okay, for
whole
sure.
like part of Interstellar where they're talking about numbers and they basically put all these mathematical connections together to like see different dimensions and it's
Ooh.
been a while since I've watched the movie, but I feel like it's right up your alley. So I was just thinking
I'm
about
definitely
it.
going to see that for sure. But what you mentioned with the zeros and ones,
Mhm.
right? Which is binary code, computer code, binary code. So there was an 18th century mathematician named Leibniz,
Okay.
and he was studying the I Ching, which is a 5,000-year-old philosophical system, mystical system from China. Okay.
Yeah. So
It's
I
called,
Ching and the Kabbalah are part of human design. So
oh, okay. So,
yeah, so
because,
I know a lot about those two things. Yep.
all right. So Leibniz is this 18th century mathematician, and he's looking at the I Ching, which is basically based on 64 symbols, hexagrams, and each symbol has all these meanings. And Confucius did his version of that. And he's looking at this and he's seeing in it the beginnings of the 0 and 1 binary code. It inspires him to come up with the binary code, which later on became the binary code that we use in computers today. So here we go with this idea that this ancient mystical knowledge must be just silliness and all that kind of stuff. Actually, it's not at all. Our computer language today was, originated in this inspirational experience that a mathematician had in the 18th century. So I looked into these things. Now, I've been doing this for, a quarter century now. So I just have great hair, but I'm, obviously pretty old. But anyways, the thing is that my idea was, is there a psychological connection to these numbers? I mean, can we see wounding patterns? Can we see struggles? Can we see things that you're good at, things that have to learn? And I have found that all of that is hidden in this mathematical algorithm to your life. And I've been helping people from literally all walks of life. I mean, I've worked with people from, housewives in the Midwest to Fortune
Yeah.
500 CEO, to everybody, because it's all just numbers and lessons for me. Right.
Yeah.
And so what I found is that we are born with certain lessons given to us at birth, and we're going to have an environment that usually is connected to that lesson. So
Mm.
there's certain types of parental dynamics and where you grow up and certain types of events that are preordained, and then you're going to be, if you want to call, conditioned by those experiences and affect you on a deep psychological level, and then a matrix is created. That's the mathematical matrix. Then you go out into the world and you have a program going on, and then you attract this kind of boyfriend. You're playing out this kind of issue with certain bosses. You really want to do this, but you have insecurities, and you're not happy with your job, but you'd rather. All these things are kind of written in here. Now, I don't know every little detail about someone's life, right?
Sure.
But and I don't know exactly what happened to you, but I know enough to help guide you to breaking this code of, right, that you're reenacting these wounding patterns, these traumas, whatever it is, and helping you to wake up to your higher purpose. Because I think that's probably the most powerful tool that I have here, is I can see the higher purpose of every person. As long as I have their information, I can see the pathway to their higher purpose. And that's, gives people the opportunity to change their lives and awaken out of their program and their matrix. The numbers change, they morph.
So
And
I have a couple questions based on that. So
you know,
when you're working with someone, are you just using the birth date, or are you using time? Like, what specific information do you need from someone to see into the higher purpose?
so your birth date, time is only for astrology and I
Okay.
guess for human design as well. But the full name as it appeared on the birth certificate. So
Okay.
that's not new, by the way. That's not a new age concept that letters and numbers are intertwined and can have mystical meanings. That dates back thousands of years.
Hmm.
The Hebrews did it. That's a part of Kabbalah.
Hmm.
And they didn't have numbers, the Roman numerals, that we use. They used letters as numbers. So
Mm.
Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, these are the A, B, C, D in Hebrew. And each one of these letters is attributed to a number. And then you would look at a word, right? And each letter equaled a number, and you can add up all the letters, and then the word had a number to it. And then they would connect that number to other words that added up to that number. It was a very mystical system. It was called gematria,
Okay.
but the Greeks had their own version of it too, isopsephy. And they connected the Greek characters, letters to numbers, and all of that was written in code. So it's not a new concept. It's not new age.
Yeah.
And the belief was that, words and the letters of words have a vibration to it.
Yeah.
And so when you look at the birth date, right, and people are into astrology, understand how important birth dates are,
Yeah.
right? And the full name, the full complete name, because that's sort of, if you want to call it, the stamp, the karmic
Yeah,
stamp,
like it's like your imprint. Like, this is the day
imprint.
you were born, and this is your name. Like, there was
No,
no mistake that this is the letters and numbers that you have in this lifetime. It's your code.
that is correct. Now remember where I grew up. My mother was a senior professor at UCLA, and
Hmm.
she was a staunch skeptic, right?
Hmm.
So it's not that of all people, you got to understand something. I know skepticism better. When I talk to skeptics, I laugh and I say, "You're a lightweight." My mom was so skeptical that she was skeptical of skeptics because she didn't think they were skeptical enough, right? And I always talk about this because it's kind of a fun little anecdotal thing. But my mom was a descendant of Albert Einstein, and that was her name. Her maiden name was Einstein, and she kept it. So my mother was known as Professor Einstein, and
Oh
you
my
know.
gosh, how funny is
So,
that?
but regardless of that, because I'm not blood related to Einstein, but my mother was, but nonetheless, she really was this brilliant mind. So I understand the arbitrary nature of having a birth date and your grandmother's name was Cynthia, and that became your middle name. I can only tell you this: I've done over 20,000 sessions, and whatever you want to say factually from the work that I've done, there is a correlation between the name that you were somehow given in the birthday and year and month that you came under, and it correlates to your life. And I have shown that literally thousands of times.
It's like why all Karens are called Karen, right? Like they
Isn't that weird?
I just thought that was funny. But yeah, so I'm curious about manifestation here. So I do a lot of work in that space. I fully believe that you can raise your vibration to match, a desired reality. And so how does that work with these numbers? Because you say like, numbers can change. So like what's the correlation between kind of, I guess, manifesting your desired reality to numerology?
To do it in the most effective manner, you have to know what your programming is, what your mythology that you carry, your false belief system, the distortion. And everyone carries distortions, you know. An anorexic woman will look in the mirror and she will see what? A fat person. She could be two weeks away of dying from malnutrition. So we all have these wacky, distorted beliefs about ourselves, even if we, think that, oh, well, I know better than that. But you have to know the program that you're carrying, I think, to fully understand how to rework the program, right? That's why I think this is important. And also, there is a higher path for everyone, right? Then it's about reprogramming and changing patterns, changing belief systems, and taking action. And I'm very practical about that, right? And so, I did take a look at your life path number. And, when I do a chart, I do 6 numbers typically, right? And so the life path number is just a small element of it and not enough to really decode a person in any really real way. But I did notice that you had an interesting number that seems to correlate to what you're talking about right now. So your life path number is a 44/8. Now I use double digit numbers and properly. That's when you're using, proper numerology. You just don't break it down in single digit. You have to look at the double digits that preceded it. 4 + 4 is 8. And that's considered a master number in traditional numerology. All the double digits that repeat, so 11, 22, 33, in your case, 44. And there seems to be some erroneous belief that master numbers stop at 33. There's a lot of misinformation out there on TikTok and all these formats. These people literally have no idea what they're talking about. I don't know. It's like these people picked up the Idiot's Guide to Numerology, and now they're like, I know everything. I'm like, no, you don't.
So we need you on TikTok.
Well, that's funny. It's my publicist says that all the time. So I'm just going to give you a little bit about this. And then
I'm so excited. I didn't expect this. So tell me all the things. I mean, I love getting ready.
So this is not a full complete reading, which would take the entire podcast. Last one I did took the entire podcast, but it's just going to be a little bit because I don't have the luxury of seeing all these other numbers that are really going to tell me where the chart's going. So keep that in mind. This is just it's going to get modified by other numbers in a full reading. However, it's a notable number. Right. So 8 has to do with self-worth and self-value, and it has to do with authority and power and having the ambition to manifest, your higher goals. And it's a number we typically associate with, someone who's here to really accomplish and achieve slightly higher than the average person. Okay.
Yeah, no surprise. I'm an overachiever, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, now I've done, let's say, I think around 5 or 6 billionaires over the years. Now, for me, it's kind of interesting, but for me, it's just all numbers to me. I don't really make too much bones about if someone's a billionaire or not. But I noticed that the number 8 popped up, not necessarily in the life path, but another area of the chart, a deeper lesson called what I call the ultimate goal number. But they can also have it in the life path as well. And each one of these people, to their face, told them that they had self-worth issues. And they agreed. Now you might ask, how does somebody who's a multi-billionaire have self-worth issues? Obviously, they must have all this empowerment within. And it was because they didn't have the self-worth that it propelled them and pushed them to have to prove. So it does bring a higher likelihood of success, but it's because of the self-worth issues that actually propels them to do so. So that's the psychology behind it. Now, the other thing is the 44. Okay. Now, 4 is your foundation and your stability in life. It's a double 4 is a master number, meaning that you had that double. But remember, the life path is a lesson. It may not be the big whopper, I call it, a lesson in the chart, but it's a lesson. And 4 has to do if you're feeling grounded and stable growing up. Well, when you have a double 4, you don't necessarily feel that way, right? And then later on in life, we have to build our own internal foundation through step-by-step process, right? Now, 4 happens to be a very analytical number. So they have a tendency to overanalyze things, and they have to learn to breathe and slow down and stretch and build their success slowly through each step. If they skip steps, that's going to be a problem. So, but it's because they did not grow up in a stable feeling environment that later on in life becomes very important that they build their own security. Now you can also
that checks out for me.
Now you can we do interesting things in relationships. Again, I don't have the ability to see everything here, but
Yeah.
sometimes we will find people, because it's a part of a psychological wound, the self-worth connected to a feeling of instability growing up, and we may attract partners that we can provide stability for, or even friends or people, and we can fix and stabilize, right?
Yeah.
So that's stabilizing for love,
Yeah.
right?
I do
Fixing for
that
love.
so much in my friendships. I luckily have a really
Mm,
amazing partner now, but in
mm.
my past relationships, I did a lot of that. In my
Sure.
friendships, I still do that for sure. I'm always attracting people who need help, and I can't take it because they always want my help with stuff. And then I like to sometimes, and I think there's
Mm.
an inconsistency of how I go to help someone, and then one day I'm just not in the mood, and so then, but
Well,
yeah,
like I said, that we talk about how the numbers change as we change. So, I mean, I wish I had the whole thing, and I like doing full readings, and it's fun. But I wanted to go back to 2022,
yeah.
okay, and we'll take it from the fall of 2021 to the end of 2022. So, late summer, fall of 21 to the end of 2022. Now, that was your. Now, the reason why I'm going back there is that was the last time you're in an 8 year. Because prior to that, I think you're just too young. That's 2013,
Mm,
and I think you're just too damn young. But that was your first kind of adult 8 year.
mm,
And so let me explain. There are these numerological cycles that are happening in the background. They are temporary. You're not born with them. They're just cycles that influence you. And there's 9 year cycles, right?
mm,
So when you hit your ninth year, whatever your birth, I mean, it's you learn that based on what your birth date is, the month and day of your birth, and you add it to the year. But anyways, you're depending on what your birth date is, you're going to be 1 through 9. And after your ninth year, then you start over again in another 1 year, and you do another 9 year cycle. But you were in an 8 year, and the reason why I take it from the fall of 2021 is that there's always a little bit of a lead in, right?
mm.
Somewhere around October,
So it doesn't it's
Octoberish.
not based on, like, your birthday, like, I turned this year, it's
No,
actually when, like, it's 2024 now, so this is, like
mm,
is this oh, it's
well,
not 1 year then for me?
it is a 1 year for you.
Okay,
You're correct. So now you're in a 26/8, which can affect relationship stuff. There
mm,
can be a change in your relationship status, or there can be shifts in your relationship during that time frame.
mhm,
But it's also the 8 is going to try to influence you to ignite the 8 that you were born with, right?
mm,
So it's going to say it's time to push out ambition, take things in the next level, hike up your goals, practice that manifestation,
mm.
right? So there could have been developments in your career during that time that were important as far as your ambition was concerned,
Yeah, that's when
you
I
know?
left my corporate job.
Okay.
Yeah, that was when I
Okay.
left my corporate job, when I pursued human design fully. Um, I had already been doing human design, but I mean, it was, like, a really dark time for me because I was just pulled. I had a really big corporate career and, 6 figures, the whole bit. And, like, totally, that
Mm.
was the beginning of 2022. That March was when I said I'm done and I quit. And then I pursued this full time that entire year, which was very hard at first, but also the best thing I've ever done for my life.
Okay. Let's go back to that's amazing, by the way,
Thank you.
and badass. And so I want to go back to your 44/8.
Hmm.
Let's see why that's so extraordinary, because the 448 has a lot of concerns, let's say anxieties about stability and foundation, because they didn't grow up with it. Leaving, a remember, 8 rules authority and power. So we were in an authoritative position. So you might have some level of executive position or some sort of title or something like this.
Hmm.
But by leaving that job, you had pulled that 4 from underneath you,
Mm.
right? Because,
Is
well,
that a good thing then?
it's incredible, because just understand this. You have this predisposition to have concerns about your stability and your foundation, because of how you experienced your childhood. The
Yeah.
44 doesn't always mean you had an unstable child physically, but certainly the anxiety or the concerns of a parent made it feel that way, right?
Yeah.
So
Oh, I did.
growing, all right. So now, when you left that job, you're leaving financial security and stability and long term. You can get your 401k and benefits and all that kind of stuff, right? By leaving that, you're believing in your self worth enough, you're valuing what your capabilities are, to say I can build, within my own life, take authority for my own life, doing what I really love. Again, I don't have the rest of your numbers, but I'm assuming they're involved in health, wellness, spirituality, and things like that, right? But
Hmm.
to go back to this, you had to believe in yourself enough that you could make your own money and build your own stability and foundation.
Yeah.
So, and so that you were going against your programming, which says stay here. It's stable. Everything is fixed for you here, right? But that wasn't associated with your higher values and what you wanted in life, right?
Mhm.
Which will show in the rest of your chart.
Yep.
So you went against, right? You broke free of the matrix that no, you want to keep that job because it's stable and secure. You're going to have long-term security out of this, but at what expense, right? So
Right.
you broke that matrix, and then you went and said, no, I believe in myself that I can do what I want, what's going to fulfill me, and build my own financial stability from that. I can create my own path. I can be the executive of my own life. I have
Yeah.
that self-worth.
That and it's so interesting you say that because like as a child, I mean, I grew up in a very lower middle class, family.
Mm,
My mom's an alcoholic and my parents were divorced when I was 3 and my dad was always working overtime to make ends meet. So I grew up without a lot of money. And so
mm,
yeah, that was that year. It's funny you even say that as well because in 2022 was the biggest money healing journey I've ever gone on. I was at a retreat and had this whole like massive spiritual experience happen where I was meditating on just money. I'd started doing some like money, listening to some podcasts on the psychological like impacts of money. And I was listening to some meditations on, childhood connections. And then I went to this retreat and I fully, totally sober too, just had this massive experience where I connected with
mm,
myself as a child. And I met myself in a situation that I did remember as a kid, but it was the story of my dad saying that I like designer milk because I wanted him to buy almond milk at the grocery store. I didn't remember, like I remember that happening because it's still kind of a joke in our family, but I
mm,
couldn't tell you what I was wearing or what I looked like in that moment, but it like took me to that moment in my kitchen with my
mm,
sisters, and I
mm.
stood there next to myself and it was this really profound experience where I, held that girl's hand and then I held my future self's hand and like there was this full, visual thing that was just happening in my head, but it was such a relief, and since that experience, I mean, money hasn't been something that I've even thought about. So, yeah, it was totally a year of so much. I left my job. I missed 2 car payments. I'm still, like, trying to figure out my credit is now kind of building from that, but it was a year of just lots of mistakes with money, and then I'm like, "I need to fix this. I need to figure it out," and so then I had that happen, the, spiritual experience, and then it's never been a worry since. But I fully believe in, yeah, I definitely broke something in that experience for sure.
So there's a lot there. So you grew up, where there was concerns about money and stability.
Mhm.
And interestingly enough, that's not uncommon for a number like that. But I've even seen cases, and that's why I always, I'm never quite sure. Sometimes there is enough, but a parent doesn't think there is, right? Even if there is.
Mhm.
So it does.
Yeah.
I don't make a distinction between the two. It's your experience of it, right? You're
Mhm.
asking for designer milk, which is basically you're asking for me to go and spend extra money on this almond milk,
Yeah.
right? And you're like, who are
Right,
you to
take it
ask
so
for that?
personally,
Yeah,
apparently, yeah.
right. And by the way, I had almond milk this morning. Just want to let you know I'm on board with the almond milk. You
Woohoo.
know, and I spend way too much money at Air One Market. Anyways,
Same when I'm in LA.
yeah, this has to do with these are memories about self-worth concerns and feeling, related to what you deserve and abundance consciousness and things like that. That's very much a part of your wound. A lot of the time we'll see people doing work, particularly in the spiritual space, that directly relates to their wound.
Mhm.
And because that's a part, it is your life path number. So it is going to be part of what you do. It's going to be part of your vocation. So that was a really breakthrough time for you. you know
Totally.
you'll catch up to your payments, and you'll realize you can do this, and
Yeah.
you will be successful,
Yeah.
just like most of the other eights. Now, because it's a wound and a lesson, you have to go through some of these trials and tribulations first, but that is normal and a part of the process.
Mhm.
That's okay. You're meant to go through those things. And
Yeah.
by the way, you can also look at your significant other and see where the positive manifestation of your numbers are, or any more, shall we say, challenging aspects as well, because we tend to project our numbers, this number, but more likely some other numbers in the chart, which I don't have time to go through today. But
Sure.
we definitely get these kinds of mirrors into our life from who we attract,
Mhm.
right? So, for example, you have to look at his self-worth, his self-value, his relationship with career, work, and money. And you'd say, wait a minute, this is, he might have some positive aspects about that are good for you. or maybe he, mirrors some of the challenging aspects too, which is not, again, that's not necessarily bad either. Why? Because we're learning these things and we tend to attract what we need to learn.
Mhm.
you know by now I've been doing this for so long and I've seen so many cases and so many case studies that this is all just a big giant matrix to me now. So anyways, go ahead.
Well, it's gotta be so fun just to see. I know I
Mm,
feel that way when I look at a human design chart and I see the synchronicities or I hear similar stories from several people who have the same aspects. So it's gotta be so fun. And, I really love the way that you describe it. It's so empowering. And I have to do a reading with you at some point, and I would love to dive into my partner's chart, my chart. I mean, I want to
mm,
get into all of this because I just feel like it's so helpful. And so I guess I'm curious from you
mm.
with the year of 2024. Now, we've been talking a lot about the personal charts, but is there a collective theme that we all move through? Um, or is it very much individual?
I'm not. I've done these interviews before, since years back about, calendar years. They call them universal years and how they affect society in general. And I have mixed feelings on that. Someone sent me something about another one of these TikTokers. They're like, it's 2024 and that adds up to an 8. So everyone's going to get rich, you know?
Mm,
And, eight's the money number. So everyone's going to get rich because it's 2024. And he's like, if you want to know how to get rich, with your numbers, then you got to contact me. And, probably get poor paying this guy's exorbitant fees. Theoretically, maybe some larger macro things like maybe they'll, because of interest rates cuts at some point in the year, maybe the stock market is at an all-time high right now. We'll have to see if that stays. So there's all these things that are happening maybe on economic level, but I don't think it's worthwhile to make too much hay about this kind of stuff. Same thing with addresses and people's houses. you
mm,
know and I don't buy too much into it. One interview I did, I said, look, there does seem to be sometimes when you go out and you buy a property and just sort of like because it speaks to you and this is where you want to live, and
mhm.
then you later on analyze the address and it may kind of correlate to where you are vibrationally in your life at that moment. That has some kind of like synchronicity and kismet to it. But
Yeah.
people calling me and saying, hey, I got all these different addresses, which one adds up to the best one for me? I don't know. I haven't done as much research on these things, and I think it's more important to find out what cycle you're in.
Yeah. And
You
you have
know,
free will to choose, right? Like tune into your intuition and see what speaks to you. And then I think the numbers will place you in the right place no matter what. Like the programming will put you where you're meant to be. So you don't have to overthink it so bad.
that's dead on. That's right on. That's right on the spot. That's
Hmm.
true. And I think that you have to be careful in micromanaging this stuff. You want to have a flow in life to a certain degree. These are guideposts that help you along your way. It'll help you understand why you attract certain people or why there's difficulties in some areas of your life. But then you need to take steps. And yeah, I would say certain time frames tend to be a little bit more conducive to others. You are in a new start. You're in a 28-10-1. I will say something about this particular type of one.
Yeah.
It rules partnership success to partnerships, contracts, and agreements.
Well, I
Okay.
think I'm getting engaged this year. So I
Yeah.
think that
Well,
might, that
well,
when you
that
said
that
that earlier about like partnerships or relationship changes, I'm like, I mean, I feel like that's coming and we've talked a lot about it. So I'm, by the time this
yeah.
episode comes out, maybe I'll have a ring on my finger. But yeah. So that's really
Well,
interesting.
so you're partnering an alliance with someone makes you stronger than or more effective than just alone, right?
Yeah.
But not just that, but also you may find that there are other people in your space that you can team up with, or you scratch their back and they scratch your back. Don't be afraid to work with others and have mutually beneficial arrangements,
Mm,
and that's going to be key to your success this year.
wow.
Those are specificities to that kind. This is why when
Yeah.
people only use single digits, I'm like, you're missing so much important information.
Well, and it's crazy because, well, I just hired a podcast manager. I mean, I
Mm,
have our editor, but I just hired someone to manage all of it because I need to put
mm,
my energy in other places. And we just brought the girl who's been helping me with social media. She's been, very much part-time and had other clients, but now she's taking a greater role in my business. And I'd love to bring her on full time this year if it comes out to that. So It's cool you're saying that because I mean, that's exactly what's happening in my world right now. I said this year is about discipline for me and delegation and focusing really on my future. If you're into astrology, I'm hitting my Saturn return coming up. So
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
yeah, so I've definitely been feeling a lot of that energy. I had a couple astrologers talk to me a little bit about what that looks like in my chart, which is around family and, roots and things. And so that's been really
Oh,
top of
fourth
mind.
house, fourth house.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. And it's been very top of mind for me. Like
Mm,
I've been wanting to figure out where I'm living the rest of my life. I want to buy a home. I'm like, when am I gonna have kids? Like I've just been thinking about very like rooted family, like that sort of stuff a lot,
mm-hmm.
setting myself up for success in the future financially. And it's really cool what you said earlier because I fully believe, when I did that money healing stuff in 2022, I fully had a moment where I knew that when I had that experience, when I held hands with my future self and my younger self, my future self laughed at me. And she just said, "Oh my gosh, it's so funny what you are so concerned with right now. Like you're going to be okay." And she kind of said to me, like, you're going to be really successful and not
Mm-hmm.
even worry about money at all. And
Mm-hmm.
I fully believe that. I fully believe that abundance and money is something that will come into my life. And it has, really since then. But I love that what you're saying because, and I love when this happens when I get any sort of reading, there's synchronicities amongst all of them. So
Yep.
it's just really beautiful and it reassures you in so many ways. So.
Yeah, so that's the Jungian, synchronicity thing. And my former psychotherapist from back in the day told me I was a Jungian or a follower of Jung. I'm not even sure if that was a compliment or not, but I think it was. But I take it that way. But yeah, you'll notice that there are, experiences you have, similar messages coming to you around the same time. Again, I've been doing this for so long. I'm used to these things, and seeing these things are a fact to me.
Yeah.
And when the student is ready, all kinds of masters shall appear in different guises and experiences, to help you on your path,
Yep.
right? And it's just about utilizing them and taking the steps forward. But yeah, it sounds like you are actually doing the things that are associated with your cycle. That's
Yeah.
why I feel good about it, because you are in alignment.
Yeah.
You're in alignment,
100%.
you
Yeah.
know so this is good.
Yeah. Well, and it's cool because, I just have your chart pulled up here. And as you're talking, you're a human in human design, you're a sacral generator. And I can tell, one, you're so excited about numerology, which is a part of your, purpose. And being excited about things is what makes a generator, so infectious. And so I can feel that from you. But what's really interesting is you said the word analytical, and I just immediately thought how analytical you are as a person. I can just see it in you. And
Oh
in
yeah.
your chart, you've got this whole area up here where your mind is connected straight to your head. So you've got this energy that's like it's incredibly analytical. Even the gift that you have there is all around awareness and being able to see an inner knowing within things and having this inner awareness of how like everything functions. And it's tied to your incarnation and your human design. So it's so cool seeing it play out.
Well, whoever this guy was, I forgot his name. The
Raruhu.
yeah, right. Apparently, there's a lot in common with him, and even the timing of me coming back to Ibiza. When I read up about him a little bit more, I went, oh, I feel like a kindred spirit. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, I like this guy,
Yeah.
and definitely just felt connected to him in his work. And I am working on a book. It's been kind of slow going because I get sidetracked, but I'm about halfway done now. And in the book, I talk about these case studies about how certain numbers play out in various aspects of our life. And that's just based on research, right?
Mm.
And it's kind of help people to wake up out of this sort of the unconscious usage of their numbers to a conscious manifestation of their numbers. Like I said, the numbers change. You know, the code is meant to be broken, and the numbers morph into the higher elements of it, right? So when you're sort of unconsciously innate, you might have anxiety about money. You might have self-worth concerns, and particularly with the 44, growing up in an environment that did not feel stable or secure. But late, that can create being stuck in a pattern just to keep yourself financially stable, but not necessarily thriving.
Yeah.
And then when you waken out of that, you then realize you can create your own stability and your own foundation. You may have grown. You see, all those experiences that you had growing up was, they correlate to your life path number. There's other things in your chart as well, again, that I have to keep saying that because people must understand
Yeah.
I'm only using one fifth of a chart, even less. So that's why it takes quite some time to do a reading. But you're definitely experience things associated with your life path, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's meant to be. Then you understand that when you look at experiences in your life, you might have a predisposition to have anxiety about something, but when you remember, oh my gosh, that's because I grew up under that. That's what trained me to believe that way. But I don't have to buy into that anymore. I can choose to see things from a more abundant way of approach. But you need to understand the predisposition. You understand the code first,
Mm-hmm.
because a code, these things like human design and astrology and numerology, when done properly, I must add,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a little too many people out there doing things not properly, but when they're done properly, they help us to understand this process.
Yeah.
It's and you had this experience, of course, in your 8th cycle, and it had to do with what?
Mm-hmm.
Issues involving money, and 8 in your 8th cycle
So
with
my
your 8
next
life
eight
path.
cycle will maybe hopefully be really abundant.
No, that's a correct way of looking at it. You're right. You're right. I mean, I could go back to 2013. You're just too damn young, but you could, I don't know, maybe you can think about what you're going through during that time frame in a super young, like, way.
It's my
But
senior year my senior year of high school.
yeah, you're too young. But
Yeah.
you're indeed right. In your next 8 cycle, that could be a time frame of great success and abundance because you're ready for it at that point.
Yeah. I'm curious your thoughts around two things, angel numbers and then also people having a lucky number.
Yeah. So, oh God, the angel numbers. So I have a love-hate relationship with angel numbers because in many ways it became that this sudden sort of popularity of angel numbers has brought numerology back on the map in many
Right. So you're
ways.
like, I have lots of people coming to me now.
Well, and then people are asking me, and it puts more interest in numerology, and I think it's been good for numerology in that way. The term angel number was coined by Doreen Virtue in the early 2000s, who was sort of a new age spiritualist who did a lot of these little decks that give you messages and cards, and
She the one that turned on all of that too?
yeah, you got it. Yeah, at some point she became an evangelical or a devout Christian, and then she turned her back on all that stuff, saying it was wrong, and I had screwed up and all that stuff. So I'm not a big fan either way
Yeah.
about her, and there's no correlation between these numbers and specifically angels,
Mhm.
although you could say, I'm getting into semantics here, but you could say these numbers that we see can take on a life of its own, and they may have a vibrational frequency, and then they can bring us messages, right? But
Mm.
I don't, just because Doreen Virtue called it an angel number, turned on all that stuff, and then 20 years later suddenly we're talking about angel numbers again. And I, now when people ask me about it, I said I will tell you what that number means from my experience, but I don't specifically call that an angel number, but you can call it whatever you want.
Three numbers? Because you'll see like 777 or 444. Like, is that considered, or is it just like two numbers, or it could just be one number?
So usually they're at least double digit numbers. Like the most common one is 11, 11, 11,
Mhm.
which happens to be sort of the basis of all master numbers. Remember, I told you the double digits repeat: 11, 22, 33, 44, which is your master number in your life path. Which, by the way, when you really attain the mastership of that number, it morphs into concerns about your stability, into building large scale projects with you at the helm.
Oh, yeah.
So that would mean, and I associate force sometimes with actual physical places. So that could be a center, that could be like a place to go, a
You're just right in
building.
my head right now because I have
Yeah.
all that floating around.
All right. All right. Now, isn't that interesting? We grow up feeling very, destabilized, and a lot of anxiety about keeping the roof over the head, right?
Mhm.
And worries that you're asking for expensive designer milk, right?
Mhm.
To at one point owning an establishment, a center or a foundation like that.
Yeah.
So, which by the way, people can go who are unstable, so
Mm.
they can be stabilized, right?
Yeah.
So you see, the wound gives us this kind of a higher purpose. But
Yeah.
back to angel numbers, usually double digit numbers: 11, 11, 22, and then there are triple digits, quadruple digits,
Mhm.
these kinds of things. And look, what they mean is that consciously we're starting to wake up out of the matrix,
Mm.
and these numbers are showing us that giving us messages that there is more to life than what we've been seeing in our tunnel vision. Now they all have their own sort of, I guess you could say threes mean something a little bit more than fours and fives and things of this sort, right? So if you see 3 5s, maybe it's a time frame when you need to break free from limitations and restrictions, take chances, travel, free yourself from the self bondage and chains of life. If it's sevens, it's time to delve into the mysteries of life. Go, maybe you're going to go to an ashram or go to a retreat, or it's time to research more or find or meditate. Eights, it might be a time frame for you to really take further authority and power for your work, realize what your achievement, possibilities are, and move into stronger self-worth. I mean, you can, nines would mean reach out to humanity and start to have a more global perspective and be more of a healer, teacher, helper. I mean, you can do that. Yeah. But the funny thing is I started seeing these books on angel numbers, which again is a made up term from a woman who turned her back on the term that she made up, and which you astutely pointed out. And now these new meanings that have nothing to do with traditional numerology, and I don't buy into it.
I'm glad you told me this. I love that. I love breaking. There's two things I love. I love spirituality, but I like making spirituality practical, and I like demystifying it, and I like mystical stuff as well. So I do appreciate that realm, but I like things especially when it comes to numbers. I want it to be practical, and I want to know the origins of where something comes from. And with lucky numbers, I guess I get curious. Like, so my lucky number is 9. I was born at 11 November 9th, 1995 at 8:09 p.m. My mom was born on, a 9. My grandma was born on a 9. My partner is a 9. My dog is born on June 29th. Like, and my last name's McLeod, and I always thought Cloud 9 had a really great ring to it. But I just love that number. It's like my lucky number. I use it for everything. I feel like I always have good luck when there's a 9 involved. Does that, I mean, obviously that isn't, maybe you see that some people happen to choose, you said I'm a 448, 8 could have been my lucky number, but it's not necessarily. But I don't know, I guess, is there any sort of like thing that you correlation you notice between people having a lucky number and something?
So yeah, well, not to be redundant here, but just once again, I'm only scratching the surface with one number. It may seem like I'm giving you a lot of information. I've only done this for 7,000 years, so that's why I can with one number. So, right. So you got to understand that. But when it is entirely possible that one of your other, 5 numbers, in the chart may very well be a 9. So let's start with that. The other thing is that it's also important to understand what a 9 means, generally speaking, and not, some goofy rendering it, from an angel number book. But the 9 signifies reaching out to the masses and the public, usually with a, if you want to call it, healing and helping, altruistic message. And so 9s are people persons, and they're supposed to do things on a more, universal way. We're all in this together, and it's not just about me, it's about all of us. And it's about having empathy and sympathy for others and wanting to do something to make the world a better place. Well, not all 9s are like that, by the way. I think someone sent me, once in a while I get these weird messages sent to, like, I'm going to spend time and answer all these questions. But somebody, I was like, what the fuck is this? But anyway, somebody sent me some weird thing, and it was like, I think it was this evil dictator in Russia, it was a 9. And so you can't take one number out of context.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
So,
and you did say, universalizing, public, so maybe it's like,
oh yeah, he killed a lot of people. It's very universal, so yeah, you have to look at the entire chart and not, but like I said, you may have 9s in your chart, and which wouldn't shock me considering the work that you do. And yeah, but 9 is a number that's, if 1 is the individual self, we're talking about one person here, and that's you and you doing your own thing. And you have 9, which is the sort of the, there's the beginning and the end, or the alpha and the omega, or just me. And then the 9 is like everybody else. Right. So 9 really does think in terms of how we can, shape things in society. But, if your chart has a lot of like 5s, which is like marketing and promoting, and you have 9s, you might be involved in public relations. So it doesn't always mean that you're, like Gandhi or Mother Teresa just because you have a 9 in your chart. There's other versions of it. Some performers have 9s. They have 9s because they're reaching out to a larger audience. But traditionally speaking, and I'd say, idealistically, you should do something to help others on a broader level,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. Well, and that's a big part of what I love to do in my purpose with human design. I love just to help people. So, oh my gosh, I am like beyond fascinated with all the things. I feel like I could talk to you forever, but we do have to probably wrap this up. And I'm curious, do you teach? Do you have courses? I know you said you're coming out with a book. How can people learn from you?
Oh God, just listen to those damn podcasts.
Just type in your name on Apple Podcasts and we'll find you.
I get, yeah, yeah. I'm doing more and more of these. I haven't done a lot of social media. I'm not huge on it, but my publicist now is like, you better get to work on that, friend. And so I'm going to be doing more, and I'll probably will be, doing some kind of TikTok stuff.
I
Oh,
was gonna say you're gonna blow up on TikTok. I have a pulse on that for you.
and
I love
so
it.
I'll be doing all that kind of stuff, and I'm generous with the information. I really do want to help, and I
Yeah.
maybe I didn't. I just want to make it clear. Yeah, I've spent a lot of time on this algorithm, but I'm driven by to help and to heal, and I have my own wounds. I was adopted. I think I was psychologically wounded by that. I had a difficult relationship with my mother growing up. I had feelings of abandonment. I had all kinds of things, and I played out those wounds in my life, and it's given me a lot of empathy and sympathy for others. And this all stuff is fascinating and fine and dandy, but the real purpose of it is to heal and to help others, and that's what I'm here for. You
Amen.
know, you
Yeah,
know. So
absolutely.
if people want to get a reading, they can always book something on my website.
Yeah, we'll link that down below too. We'll link
Yeah.
everything so people can book with you. I mean, I'm going to go to that link right away. I want to book with you and spend an hour talking to you about just my chart. So I thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your wisdom and your knowledge. It's been really fascinating, and I can't wait to see, where else you go. And I'm going to definitely tune into even more podcasts. Maybe I'll have to have you come back on. We're trying to do more in-person stuff. I'm currently turning my
Oh,
office into a podcast studio, so maybe you can come and
cool.
we could
Yeah,
dive a little bit deeper, or even do a live reading or anything that you'd want to do for your work. I'm just fascinated by this. So I
sure.
really
You're
appreciate you
you're
taking
not
the
you're
time.
not too far away. We can do it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. But yeah, thank you, Josh, for coming on here. And yeah, just appreciate you.
Hey, thanks for having me. Ciao.
If this episode has energized you, I ask you to share it or to send it to someone where it can make a big difference in their life. And please tag me with your shares, something you learned from this episode or that you love from it. I'm at The Design of You on Instagram. Also, please DM with questions or feedback or whatever. I love to stay in touch with you. Thank you so much for your support, and consider subscribing to this podcast and leaving me a 5-star review so we can continue to grow together. Thank you, and I love you oh so much. See you soon.